My name is Walter Higgins. In the afternoon, my daughter chose a spa weekend in Napa over the ceremony. Marking my 38 years as fire chief was the same afternoon. I finally understood I'd already lost her, long before she ever packed that suitcase. The banquet hall lights dimmed as the fire commissioner walked toward the podium, nodding at the 400 firefighters, city officials, and family members packed into the Sacramento Grand Ballroom. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "tonight we honor a man who ran into more burning buildings than most of us can count and walked every single crew member back out alive." The screens behind him lit up with photographs from another era. There I was in 1988, 26 years old, soot-covered, grinning like an idiot outside Engine 14. Another showed me and men who weren't with us anymore, standing beside a rig that had long since been retired. Then came shots from department barbecues, memorial services, rookie graduations where I'd stood in the back row clapping for everyone else. Tonight was supposed to be mine. The applause rolled through the room. I smiled and nodded, but my eyes kept sliding toward the front table. One seat sat empty. A small printed card read, "Reserved. Melissa Higgins, my daughter." The camera panned across the room and found that chair. 400 people saw it at the same time I did. Nobody needed to say anything. The seat was supposed to hold my family. Instead, it held nothing. The commissioner noticed. "Thanks for watching." He leaned toward me, voice low. "Walter, you want us to hold a few more minutes?" I shook my head. "No." He hesitated. "Anyone you'd like up here with you instead?" I scanned the room and found a young man standing near the back wall, uncomfortable in a suit that had clearly been pressed with care but bought on a budget. His hands were jammed in his pockets like he wasn't sure he was allowed to be there at all. I smiled. "Tyler." His head snapped up. "My late partner's son." Heads turned to look at him. "Would you come sit up here with me?" Tyler looked almost afraid to move. "Me?" I nodded. "Your dad would have been sitting there if things had gone differently." The room went quiet. Tyler walked down that center aisle like the floor might give out beneath him and took the seat beside mine. I squeezed his shoulder. "Thanks for coming, son." His voice barely made it out. "I wouldn't have missed this for anything." A few minutes later, the commissioner stepped back to the microphone. He looked at me, then at Tyler. "There's one more thing tonight." I frowned. Nobody had told me about anything else. 15 years ago, the commissioner said, Walter Higgins turned down 3 separate promotions to battalion chief and asked instead that the department start a fund, something to honor the families of firefighters who never made it home. Murmurs spread through the ballroom. "As of today," he said, "that fund officially activates." He paused. "And the first recipient was chosen personally by Walter himself." Tyler's face went blank with confusion. "So tonight," the commissioner smiled, "Tyler Brennan will receive a gift of $750,000. The room exploded. People stood. Some cheered, some wiped their eyes. Tyler froze solid. There's some kind of mistake," the commissioner laughed gently. "There isn't." Tyler put his face in his hands. I just squeezed his shoulder harder. "You earned every dollar of this, son." 3 hours later, I sat alone in my truck outside my house on Larkspur Lane, engine off, porch light, the only thing burning. My phone buzzed, then buzzed again. When I finally looked, 94 missed calls. Most from Melissa, the rest from her husband Craig, a few cousins, 2 old neighbors, and 1 reporter from the local news. I stared at the screen a long moment, then turned it face down on the passenger seat, because everything that had just played out live on television had actually started falling apart 6 years earlier. My wife Donna and I raised Melissa in a small house, 2 streets over from the firehouse. We didn't have much when she was young, a mechanic's daughter and a rookie firefighter, saving every spare dollar we had. Melissa grew up believing we were comfortable but never wealthy, because Donna and I agreed early on that money should buy stability, not attention. Donna passed 6 years ago, an aggressive form of ovarian cancer that took her in under a year. Melissa was 28 then, already married to Craig, already building the kind of life that photographed well online. Donna's death did something different to each of us. For me, it left a silence I never quite learned to live inside. For Melissa, it created distance, like she couldn't look at me without seeing her mother's absence reflected back. At first, I told myself it was normal grief working itself out sideways. People pull away sometimes before they can pull back close. I never expected weekly dinners or long phone calls every Sunday. I only hoped we'd stay father and daughter in the ways that mattered. Instead, our conversations became scheduling logistics. Dad, can I call you back? Dad, we've got a thing this weekend. Dad, maybe next month works better. Months folded into seasons. Seasons folded into years. Whenever Melissa did visit, Craig always seemed to be checking his watch. He wasn't outright rude about it, not in a way I could ever point to directly. He just carried himself like visiting me was an obligation, wedged between more important things, his golf league, their vacations, dinners with people who mattered to his career. I never blamed him entirely. Marriage reshuffles a person's priorities. That's just true. But somewhere in there, Melissa stopped making her own decisions. If Craig had an opinion, it became her opinion too. I noticed the small things first. She stopped coming to department cookouts, stopped asking about my knees, which had taken a beating over 4 decades of stairwells and smoke. Even my birthday became a text message with a balloon emoji. I never said a word about any of it. Firefighters don't complain, and neither do the men who raise them right. About 4 months before my retirement ceremony, the department announced they wanted to formally recognize the 2 remaining active firefighters from the original 1,988 recruiting class. One had already moved to Arizona and declined the honor. That left me. Public relations wanted interviews, old photographs, a segment on the 6 o'clock news, since the department had become the largest in the county and the story had local appeal. Honestly, I'd have been thrilled with a plaque and a sheet cake in the break room. But the commissioner insisted. You've spent 38 years running toward the things everyone else runs from, he told me. Let us do something for you for once. A week before the ceremony, I drove over to Melissa's place to drop off the formal invitation. Craig answered the door in golf clothes, Melissa behind him loading a suitcase into the trunk of their SUV. Headed somewhere? I asked. Quick trip up to Napa, Craig said. Before you go, I said, and handed Melissa the invitation. She opened it, eyes widening at the seal from the mayor's office. They're filming this? She laughed. That's actually really cool, Dad. I'll be there. She glanced at Craig, then back at me. Of course I will. She hugged me. Wouldn't miss it. I believed every word. Because no matter how old your child gets, some part of you keeps believing whatever they tell you. I had no idea that 24 hours before that ceremony, my phone would ring with her name on the screen, and one 5-minute conversation would tell me everything I'd been avoiding for 6 years. Melissa's name sat on my screen for a few seconds before I answered. Somehow I already knew. Hey, Dad, she said, too bright, too rehearsed. Everything all right? I asked. So, listen, Craig found this incredible last-minute deal on a wine country package. Private tasting. The whole thing. We leave first thing tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning. The morning of my ceremony. I leaned against my kitchen counter and looked out at the old oak tree Donna and I had planted the year Melissa was born. I thought the ceremony was in the afternoon, she said quickly. But we already booked the flights. You haven't booked anything yet, have you? I said quietly. A long pause. No. So you could still, I heard Craig's voice in the background. Babe, just tell him. He'll get it. Melissa lowered her voice. Dad, we've both been working ourselves into the ground. Craig really needs this. I smiled, even though nobody could see it. I understand. We'll celebrate next week, promise. Dinner anywhere you want. That's fine. You're not upset? No, really. I'm 61, Melissa. I've learned not to sweat the small stuff. If only she knew. We said goodbye. I stood there holding the phone long after the call ended. Donna used to tell me whenever Melissa disappointed us as a teenager, don't react while you're hurting. Wait until your head's clear. She was always the wiser one between us, so I didn't call back. I didn't send a guilt-soaked text. Instead, I scrolled through my contacts and found a name I hadn't called in a few weeks, Tyler Brennan. He picked up on the second ring. Chief Higgins, everything okay? I've got a favor to ask. Anything? He said. No hesitation at all. That alone made my throat tighten. The department's holding a ceremony tomorrow. My daughter's not going to make it. Tyler went quiet. I'm sorry to hear that. I'd like someone sitting beside me. Another pause, then softer. You want me there? I do. I'd be honored. No excuses, no checking a calendar, no asking what he'd get out of it. Just, I'd be honored. I smiled for the first time all evening. Your father would be proud of the man you turned into, His voice cracked. I hope so. I met Tyler almost 25 years earlier when he was a scrawny 6-year-old racing his bike up and down our cul-de-sac while his father, Marcus Brennan, flipped burgers in our backyard. Marcus wasn't just my partner at Engine 14. He was closer to me than my own brother. We came up through the academy together, worked the same brutal overnight shifts, bought our first houses 8 months apart. Our wives became inseparable. Our kids grew up on the same street. Some of the best years of my life had Marcus laughing somewhere in the frame, that big booming laugh that made an entire firehouse crack up whether they'd heard the joke or not. Then came the warehouse fire on Delancey Street, a structural collapse nobody saw coming. I went down first, pinned under a support beam, smoke thick enough to swallow the world whole. Marcus didn't head for the exit. He came back for me, dragged me 30 feet across broken concrete while the ceiling kept coming down around us. The doctors told me later that another minute in there would have killed me. Marcus never wanted to talk about it. Anyone who called him a hero got the same answer, a shrug. You'd have done the same for me. Maybe I would have. I'll never know, because he never gave me the chance to prove it. 3 years later, a brain tumor did what that fire never managed. Watching Marcus disappear over 11 months remains the hardest thing I've ever sat through. The night before he died, he asked everyone else out of the room. Just the two of us left. He grabbed my hand. Look after my boy, I nodded. You don't have to ask me twice, he smiled. I know. Those were the last words he ever said to me. Tyler was 17 then, a kid who'd lost his father and was too proud to ask anyone for a dime. He worked nights at an auto parts store, took classes at the community college during the day, mowed half the lawns on our block on weekends. Every time I tried to slip him money, he refused politely. I'll figure it out. So instead, I found other ways in. When his truck died for good, I connected him with a retired mechanic who rebuilt the engine for scrap parts and a favor. When he transferred to Sacramento State for mechanical engineering, I introduced him to people who helped him find cheap housing near campus. When he graduated, I sat in that audience, not because anyone expected me to, but because I'd made Marcus a promise. Life had other plans for Tyler after that. He discovered he liked coaching kids more than designing machines, and took a job running an after-school robotics and trades program at the local high school. Some people thought he'd wasted his degree. I never did. Every Christmas, he mailed me a card in his own handwriting. Every birthday, he called. Whenever my gutters clogged or my water heater started acting up, somehow Tyler knew before I ever said a word, and he'd show up with a toolbox. Figured you could use an extra set of hands. That's who Marcus raised him to be, not because anyone rewarded him for it, but because it was simply who he was. The morning of the ceremony, I got to the ballroom early. Tyler was already outside, wearing that same navy suit he'd clearly worn to a few weddings and at least one funeral. He stood up straighter than half the department brass walking past him. You clean up all right, I said. He laughed. It's the only suit I own. Looks perfect on you. He handed me a small paper bag. Didn't have to get you anything. Inside was a plain leather notebook. The first page had one line, handwritten. Some men chase rank. You chase doing right by people. That's the harder thing. For a second, I couldn't say anything at all. Your father would be proud of you, I finally said. Tyler smiled. I've been hoping to hear that for 20 years. My phone buzzed before we walked in. Melissa had posted a photo her and Craig at a vineyard, sunglasses on, glasses of white wine raised toward the camera. The caption read, "Needed this so bad. Sometimes you just have to prioritize you." I locked the phone and turned to Tyler. Ready? As I'll ever be, he said. Neither one of us had any idea that within 2 hours, half the county watching that broadcast would witness something none of us saw coming. The ballroom felt enormous once every seat filled. Over 400 people, firefighters, city council members, retired chiefs, community leaders, 2 news crews with cameras rolling near the stage. Everything felt more polished than I ever expected for a career that mostly involved crawling through smoke. Tyler and I sat together at the front table. He kept glancing around like someone might notice he didn't belong. I leaned over. Relax. Trying. You've stood in front of a classroom of teenagers. Somehow this is worse. He laughed. Trust me, I said. Teenagers are tougher than any of this. That finally loosened him up. A few tables over sat men I'd worked beside for decades. Most gave me small nods. A few walked over just to shake my hand. Every few minutes, though, Someone's eyes drifted to the empty seat that had been reserved for Melissa. Nobody asked where she was. Nobody needed to. The chair said enough on its own. At exactly 7 o'clock, the lights dimmed, and a video began rolling across 3 screens. There I was at 26, first day on Engine 14, hair I barely recognized as my own. Another photo, Donna and I at a department Christmas party in 1994. Her in a red dress bought on clearance because every spare dollar was going toward Melissa's future. My chest tightened. The next picture showed Melissa herself, 6 years old, wearing my helmet 3 sizes too big, grinning like she owned the world. Funny how life turns out. The applause rolled through as decade after decade scrolled past. 38 years compressed into a 5-minute reel. Only I knew how many missed dinners, how many overnight calls, how many birthdays celebrated a day late sat behind those photographs. The commissioner returned to the podium. Walter Higgins became more than a firefighter to this department, he said. He became the standard the rest of us measured ourselves against. More applause. Then he invited Deputy Chief Renata Ortiz up to speak. Renata had come up through the ranks with me, worked 29 years beside me. I've never once had to wonder if Walter would do the right thing, she said, even when it cost him. The room looked surprised. Kuntelan. He turned down battalion chief 3 separate times because it would have meant relocating his family across the state, and Donna never wanted to leave Sacramento. I nodded. That part was true. He also quietly turned down performance bonuses more than once, Renata added. I frowned slightly. We hadn't discussed that part. She smiled like she'd read my mind. I know Walter hates attention, but tonight isn't about his comfort. It's about the truth. One person after another stood to share a story. A retired lieutenant described how I'd driven 2 hours through an ice storm to check on a rookie's family during a blackout. A dispatcher talked about how I'd quietly covered her son's medical bills after an accident. I'd genuinely forgotten some of it myself, because when you help someone, you don't keep a ledger. You just move forward. Then Renata called me up onto the stage. The applause lasted almost a full minute. I would have traded the spotlight for another shift in a burning building without hesitating. Renata handed me a heavy engraved plaque, the Lifetime Service Award. 38 years? She said, shaking my hand. Every one of them earned. Then the commissioner stepped back up. Walter, he said, we noticed someone sitting beside you tonight. The screen lit up with Tyler's face. His eyes went wide. Polite applause rippled through the room. Would you tell us about him? I turned to Tyler, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. I stepped to the microphone. This is Tyler Brennan. His father, Marcus, was my partner for nearly 15 years at Engine 14. A few older firefighters nodded, remembering Marcus immediately. He pulled me out of a collapsing building on Delancey Street. Saved my life. The room went silent. When cancer took him, Tyler was 17. I glanced at him. His father asked me for one thing before he passed. Look after my boy. My voice caught. Tyler lowered his head. I never replaced his father. Nobody could. But I've watched him grow into exactly the kind of man Marcus hoped he'd become. The room applauded. Tyler wiped at his eyes. Then I added one last line. If anyone deserved to sit in my daughter's seat tonight, it's this man. The room stood. A second standing ovation, longer and louder than the first. I saw grown firefighters wiping their faces. Just when I thought the night had reached its end, the commissioner stepped back to the mic. Actually, he said, there's one more thing. I looked over, confused. This wasn't rehearsed. 15 years ago, Walter approached the department with an unusual request, he said. Instead of accepting future promotion bonuses, he asked us to build something that would outlast him a fund for the families of firefighters who never made it home. The room leaned in. He called it the Brennan Higgins Legacy Fund. He opened a folder and read from a letter I'd nearly forgotten writing. Rank fades. Sacrifice doesn't. Help one family carry that weight, and they'll spend a lifetime passing it forward. The room went still. For 15 years, that fund has quietly grown department contributions, private donations, investment returns. He paused. Tonight it stands at $750,000. Gasps spread through the ballroom. Even I hadn't known the final number. The agreement gave Walter one privilege, the commissioner said. He alone would choose the very first recipient. Every camera swung toward me. He looked at Tyler. Tyler Brennan, please join us up here. Tyler stood on shaking legs and made his way to the stage. On behalf of the Sacramento Fire Department, the commissioner said, "We're honored to present you with the first Brennan Higgins Legacy Award." $750,000. Tyler just stared. I can't accept this." "You already have," the commissioner said gently. Tyler turned to me, eyes filled. "Why?" I put a hand on his shoulder. "Because your father once gave me the rest of my life," I said, voice breaking. "And you've spent 20 years honoring his." The room rose again, and this time the applause didn't seem to want to stop. I had no idea that somewhere in Napa Valley, Melissa and Craig were watching all of it unfold live on their phones. I didn't leave the ballroom right away. People surrounded Tyler and me for almost an hour afterward. Firefighters I hadn't seen in years wanted photos. Retired chiefs shook my hand like it might be the last time. "I've never seen a ceremony like that," one dispatcher told me. Half the room was in tears. "I wasn't planning on any of it," I said honestly. "That's exactly why it worked," she said. Tyler kept repeating the same sentence under his breath. "I still can't believe this." I finally pulled him aside. "Listen to me. That money isn't a reward for tonight." "Then what is it?" "It's recognition for the man you've spent 20 years becoming." He shook his head. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did." "How?" "You showed up." Later, Renata found me by the window overlooking the parking lot, 2 coffees in hand. "You okay?" she asked. "I think so." "You've been trying hard all night not to think about Melissa," I sighed. "That obvious?" "Only to old friends." We stood quietly a moment. "You want media to leave her name out of the coverage?" she finally asked. I thought about the empty chair the cameras had clearly caught. People would ask questions regardless. "No," I said. "Are you sure?" "I don't want anyone dragging her online." "I don't either. But I'm not going to pretend she was there when she wasn't." Renata put a hand on my shoulder. "You're a better father than most men would manage." I wasn't sure that was true. Good fathers don't always raise children who remember to show up. Sometimes all you can do is keep loving them anyway. Tyler insisted on following me home to make sure I got there safely, laughing off my protests. "You looked after me for 20 years. Let me return the favor for one night." We drove north through the quiet evening streets. When I pulled into my driveway on Larkspur Lane, he parked behind me, and we stood out there talking for a good half hour. "What are you going to do with it?" I asked. He looked down at the pavement. "Honestly, haven't thought that far yet." "I figured you'd already have a list," he smiled. "My kids at the program. We lose half of them every year because families can't afford the equipment." He paused. "I want every kid who wants to build something to actually get the chance." Then he laughed. "And maybe finally replace my truck." I was wondering how long that would take you to admit. "It's making some genuinely concerning noises." "You've earned a new one." "No," he said, serious now. "My dad earned that." Those words landed harder than I expected. Marcus would have smiled hearing his son say that. After Tyler left, the house felt unusually quiet. I hung up my jacket, set the plaque on the mantel beside Donna's photograph. "You'd have liked tonight," I told her picture. For a moment, I could almost hear her answer back. Then my phone lit up on the kitchen table. Once, twice, again and again. I frowned at the unknown number and let it ring out. Another call. Melissa. I let that one go too. Then Craig. Then Melissa again. It didn't stop. Finally, I picked up. 94 missed calls stared back at me from the screen. My phone rang again. "Melissa." This time I answered. "Hi, sweetheart." Her breathing sounded ragged, panicked. "Dad, why didn't you tell me about the money?" I looked around my quiet kitchen. "Tell you what, $750,000, Dad." I knew there'd be some kind of gift. "You never asked." Silence. "Craig and I are driving back tonight." "You already spent money on the trip." "This isn't about the trip." "Then what's it about?" She didn't answer right away. Finally, quietly, "I should have been there." I closed my eyes. "Yes, you should have." "Are you angry with me?" I thought about that carefully. "No, I'm disappointed." There's a real difference between those two things. Anger fades. Disappointment settles in and stays. Craig grabbed the phone. "Walter, look, I think everyone's overreacting a little." "What do you mean?" "People online are painting Melissa like some terrible daughter." "I haven't posted anything." "I know, but that empty chair." "What about it?" "It embarrassed us." I took a slow breath. "No. You embarrassed yourselves. Silence. You could have given us a warning, he snapped. I invited you both. That's not what I mean. I know exactly what you mean. My voice stayed level. People think Tyler deserved that money more than Melissa did. That's because Tyler was there. Craig made a frustrated sound. So that's it then. You just replaced your own daughter. No, I said. Melissa replaced herself. He had nothing left to say to that. Melissa took the phone back. Dad, I'm coming over tonight. I'll be here. I love you. The words caught me off guard. She hadn't said them out loud in longer than I wanted to admit. I love you too. The call ended. Within hours, clips from the ceremony were everywhere. Local news replayed the reveal. Comment sections filled up fast. Plenty of people praised Tyler and the new fund. Others zeroed in on that empty chair. Strangers online shared their own stories about parents who sacrificed everything only to feel forgotten later. Reading through some of it made me uneasy. These people only knew one evening. They didn't know my daughter, not really. Melissa wasn't cruel. She wasn't greedy at heart. She just spent years assuming there would always be another chance, another dinner, another ceremony, another tomorrow. Life doesn't always cooperate with that assumption. As it got dark, headlights finally swung into my driveway. Melissa wasn't alone. Craig climbed out after her, and from the look on his face, this conversation was about to get complicated. Melissa stood at the edge of the driveway a moment before walking up. Dad, she called before I'd even opened the screen door. We need to talk. You'd better come in then. Neither of them said much walking inside. Craig looked around my living room like he was seeing it for the first time. The same recliner, the same brick fireplace, Donna's quilt folded over the couch, family photos covering one whole wall. Melissa stared at those photos a long time. There she was at 7, holding her first softball trophy. There she was at 16, grinning next to her first car. There the three of us stood at her college graduation, Donna between us, smiling so wide it still hurt to look at. I haven't been in this house in months, Melissa said quietly. No, I said. You haven't. Silence sat in the room until Craig broke it. I'll just say it. $750,000? And you gave it to some guy you've known for 20 years? Not your own daughter. I didn't know the exact amount. You knew there'd be money. I knew there'd be a gift. And you chose someone else's. Kid. I looked him in the eye. I chose the person who showed up. Melissa closed her eyes. Dad? Craig turned toward her. Don't just sit there. He embarrassed us on television. No, Melissa said slowly. We embarrassed ourselves. Craig stared at her. Excuse me? He invited us. We said no. His face hardened. So you're taking his side now? I'm taking the truth side. The room went quiet. For the first time since walking in, Craig didn't have a comeback. Melissa finally looked at me. I owe you an apology. You do. I'm sorry. I believe you're sorry, I said. I just don't know what for yet. She frowned. What do you mean? Are you sorry you hurt me? Or sorry the whole state saw it happen? She didn't answer. Not stubbornness. She genuinely didn't know. I got up, walked down the hall to the spare room, and came back carrying 3 old storage boxes. Melissa recognized them instantly. I haven't seen those since Mom. Her voice trailed off. I set them on the coffee table. Open them. She lifted the lid off the first one. Folders, old receipts, envelopes, handwritten notes. What is all this? Our life. She pulled out a tuition statement from Sacramento State with her name across the top, marked paid in full. Another envelope held years of canceled checks, semester after semester of books, housing, a meal plan. I thought scholarships covered most of this. They covered some. I never knew. You weren't supposed to. She dug deeper. The down payment on her first apartment, a loan I'd quietly co-signed and quietly removed my name from 2 years later. Invoices from her wedding, the photographer, the caterer, the flowers. Her eyes went wide over one receipt. Dad, you paid for this? I helped. I thought Grandpa Wilson covered it. He covered some. She looked up. You never said a word. What would have been the point? We don't raise kids to collect thank you notes. We raise them because that's the job. She opened the second box photographs. Some faded at the edges. One showed Donna sewing a patch onto Melissa's softball uniform after a 10-hour hospital shift. Another showed me re-shingling our own roof myself because paying someone else meant dipping into her college fund. Camping trips instead of real vacations. Cakes baked at home instead of ordered from a bakery. Not because we couldn't occasionally splurge, but because every extra dollar had somewhere specific to go. Melissa picked up a photo of Donna standing next to our old minivan. I remember this thing. Almost 200,000 miles on it. I hated that van. She laughed through tears forming. Then why didn't you get a new one? Because a transmission repair costs a lot less than your freshman textbooks did. Her shoulders started shaking. She stared at the photo a long time. I never knew any of this. I know. The third box held something else. Letters. Dozens of them. Every birthday card Donna ever wrote her before she got sick. Every note tucked into her lunchbox in elementary school. Melissa unfolded one at random. Donna's handwriting filled the page. No matter how old you get, remember, time is the one gift nobody can ever buy back. Melissa's tears came for real this time. Not embarrassment, grief. I've become exactly the person Mom warned me not to be. Nobody spoke. The silence said what needed saying. A soft knock hit the front door. I opened it to find Tyler holding a paper bag, looking sheepish. Sorry, didn't realize you had company. It's fine, Melissa said, standing. I can come back. No, she said. Please stay. Tyler stepped in, setting the bag on the counter. Brought dinner. Figured nobody remembered to eat tonight. That sounded exactly like something his father would have said. Melissa watched the exchange closely. She noticed something, I think, that she'd never noticed before Tyler knew which cabinet held the plates. He knew the dishwasher door stuck unless you lifted it slightly. Not because he lived there, because he'd been showing up quietly for years, while her own daughter had been too busy. How often do you come by? Melissa asked him. Tyler hesitated. I don't know. Every couple weeks. Sometimes more, I added. Melissa nodded slowly. You've been taking care of my dad. Tyler looked embarrassed. He took care of me first. Craig suddenly stood. This is unbelievable. Now everyone gets to pile on Melissa. Nobody answered. He grabbed his keys. I'm not sitting here for this. Melissa looked at him. Then go. He blinked. Excuse me? I need to stay. For me. For him. Craig stared at her a long moment before walking out. The door didn't slam, but it might as well have. Melissa didn't follow. For the first time in years, when she turned back to look at me, she wasn't looking at an obligation. She was looking at her father. We sat down together, the three of us, and shared the dinner. Tyler brought homemade beef stew, warm rolls, and an apple pie that tasted almost exactly like something Donna used to bake every October. Nobody said much for the first few minutes. Sometimes people think healing happens through a big speech. It usually doesn't. More often, it starts over something as small as sharing a meal at the same table. Melissa finally broke the quiet. I honestly don't remember the last time we all ate dinner together. Christmas, I said, 2 years ago. Her face fell. I thought it had only been a few months. Time moves faster than we think it does. That sentence hung over the table longer than anything else said that night. The weeks after felt different. Melissa called every morning, not asking for anything, just, how are you today, Dad? At first, I wondered if it was guilt talking. But guilt gets tired. Consistency doesn't. One afternoon, she showed up with 2 old fishing poles from her garage. Thought maybe, if you're free Saturday, I smiled. I've been free for years. Her eyes watered. I know. That Saturday, we drove out to the same reservoir where I'd taught her to fish when she was 9. The dock still leaned slightly. Forgot how quiet it is out here, she said. That's why I like it. She stared out over the water. I spent so long chasing the version of success Craig cared about, I forgot to make time for the people who actually loved me. I didn't interrupt. She needed to say it out loud. You showed up my whole life, she said. And I stopped showing up for you. Yes, I'm ashamed of that. I know. You're not making this easy on yourself. No. I smiled gently. Forgiveness isn't the hard part, sweetheart. Trust is. She accepted that without arguing, and that told me more than an apology ever could. Meanwhile, Tyler's life had shifted overnight. News outlets kept the story alive. Parents wrote to thank him for staying in education. Former students posted online about how he'd talked them into engineering careers. Instead of hiding from the attention, Tyler used it. He announced that most of the award would fund equipment and scholarships for kids in his trades program. "I wouldn't be up here at all," he told one reporter, "if someone hadn't believed in me before I believed in myself." He never mentioned my name unless someone asked directly. That was Tyler always pointing the credit somewhere else. A month later, he invited Melissa and me to visit his classroom. Teenagers crowded around half-built machines and soldering stations. One girl walked up shyly. "Mr. Brennan says you're the reason we got new equipment." I laughed and pointed at Tyler. "He's the reason." She smiled. "He says you taught him what it means to actually show up for people." Tyler overheard that from across the room. He looked at me and neither of us said a word. We didn't need to. Melissa started coming by every Sunday. Sometimes we watched baseball. Sometimes we worked in the yard together. Sometimes we just drank coffee on the back porch and talked about nothing important. She never acted like one apology erased 6 years of distance. Instead, she did something harder. She kept showing up week after week, whether or not anyone was watching. One Sunday, she brought over a toolbox. "What are we fixing?" I asked. "The gate. It's not broken." "I know," she smiled. "I just wanted an excuse to spend the day with you." I laughed harder than I had in months. "There's my girl." She and Craig separated quietly a few months later. No dramatic blow-up, no lawyers screaming across a table. Just two people admitting they'd built a life around wanting different things. One evening she told me, "I don't blame him for all of it. I made my own choices. I kept picking convenience over showing up. I mistook your patience for permission." That might have been the wisest thing I'd ever heard her say. Several months after the ceremony, the department invited me back for the official dedication of the Walter Higgins Mentorship Program, expanding the original fund into an ongoing initiative, pairing veteran firefighters with young people entering the trades. Renata welcomed the crowd. This all started because one man believed character should outlast a paycheck. This time, when I walked into that auditorium, the seat beside mine wasn't empty. Melissa was already sitting there. She stood the moment she saw me. "Wanted to make sure I got here early." "You certainly did. Wasn't going to miss this one." Tyler sat on my other side. I looked at the two of them and realized something simple. One connected to me by blood. One connected by a promise kept. Family isn't diminished by gratitude. It's built stronger by it. This ceremony wasn't nearly as loud as the first one. No surprise reveals, no cameras hunting for an empty chair, just dozens of young apprentices meeting mentors who actually cared whether they made it. And somehow that mattered more than any headline ever could. Walking to the parking lot afterward, Melissa stopped beside my truck. "Dad." "Yes?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For loving me, even when I made it hard to." I put a hand on her shoulder. "Being your father was never the hard part. Waiting for you to find your way home again, that was the hard part." She wrapped her arms around me, the kind of hug that says everything words never quite manage to. For the first time in years, I felt like my family had actually come back together. Not because money fixed anything, the money never repaired a single thing between us. Time did that. Humility did that. And love, the quiet, stubborn kind that refuses to give up on people, even when they give you every reason to, finally got met halfway with gratitude. If this story reminds you of someone in your own life who's given quietly for years without ever asking for thanks, don't wait for a ceremony to tell them what they mean to you. Time is the one thing none of us ever get to earn back.